While the PlayStation 4's life is clearly winding down, one of the major exclusives that all of us are still looking forward to is of course The Last of Us Part 2. Initially, I had thought that this was going to be the major PlayStation 4 game release for this fall, but it looks like Death Stranding is going to be that game, and The Last of Us Part 2 will instead come sometime in 2020. Early indicators are pointing towards February of 2020, and it's surprising at this point because we don't even know if the game is going to be arriving in February of 2020. Obviously, Sony skipped out on E3, and that's when they would have made a lot of these major announcements, but we're still left in the dark. Hopefully we get some concrete clarity soon, but The Last of Us Part 2 is set to be launching in February 2020 with 4 different editions. We'll look at that. And also, as we're heading into the fall, one of the major highlighted games, or rather expansions that people are looking forward to, is Monster Hunter World's first expansion, Iceborne. And I say first expansion with a caveat because it also looks like it might be the last expansion for the game, and this is going to round out the MH World experience. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because Capcom has provided us with a tremendous game, and if Iceborne is going to wrap it up, honestly, I'll probably be pretty satisfied with it. Also, another game that I'm personally very much looking forward to is Spike Chunsoft's AI the Somnium Files. We got a brand new character trailer for that game, and I want to highlight that a little bit because that's a game that's going a little bit under the radar. And speaking of games going under the radar, The Surge 2 is another game that is kind of like that, but we do have a 9 minutes of new gameplay, a developer gameplay walkthrough. So I want to highlight that at the end of today's video. But first up, let's talk The Last of Us Part 2. The release has been a hot topic for this game because, again, going into 2019, I thought it was surefire that The Last of Us Part 2 was going to be released this year. It's been so long since Naughty Dog put out a brand new game. Going back to 2016 with Uncharted 4, I know they brought us Uncharted The Lost Legacy in 2017, but that was more of a smaller game, and you're foolish to think when Uncharted Lost Legacy was in development that they weren't working on other projects at the same time. Of course they were, that was just kind of a side thing, and that's surprising to me that it took so long to get The Last of Us Part 2 out. However, that's typically Sony first-party thing. They like to take their time with their games and deliver us the best possible experience. I mean, look at the time period between God of War Ascension and God of War 2018. It was a very long time, but nonetheless, as far as The Last of Us Part 2 is concerned, the latest report in The Last of Us Part 2 rumor mill is shared from insider Zug EX, a senior analyst at Nico Investors, who has suggested that not only will the game be out in February 2020, but it'll also be coming packing with 4 different editions. The source of the information comes from a poster over on A9VG called Agent Kicker, who says that The Last of Us Part 2 will launch with 4 varying versions of the game, which will include a standard edition, a special edition, a collector's edition, and an Ellie edition. Okay, so let's break that down. Of course, a standard edition would be your typical $59.99 game. I'm sure there will be some pre-order bonuses tied to that, but that is your standard game. A special edition, I would imagine, would either be $70 or more likely $80, and that would probably include some sort of season pass, some downloadable content, maybe a steelbook, stuff like that. A collector's edition then would then include things like a soundtrack CD and other little physical goodies that you would actually get. And finally, an Ellie edition, I imagine that that's where it's that $250, $300 version that's going to include an enormous statue or whatever the case may be, something like that. I feel like that's how it's going to break down. Usually most high-profile releases like this have 3 separate editions. You'll have the standard edition, then you'll have a collector's edition, and then you'll have that super-duper Ellie edition or whatever the case may be. But in this case, it looks like they're trying to separate it out into 4 separate editions, which isn't unheard of, but scenarios like this are a little bit more rare. Also, as far as the February release window goes, remember Ashley Johnson, who plays Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2, was asked just when the game would finally be arriving, and she said, quote, "I think it's coming out in Fet," and that's it. That's how they ended it. And then she was just cut off by the interviewer, so obviously that was a little bit of a tease, and everybody is now pointing to the fact that the game will probably be dropping in February of 2020, so I would imagine that that will remain to be the case. The Last of Us Part 2 is kind of cool in the sense that this really seems to be like one of those games that's rounding out the PlayStation 4's life, much like The Last of Us Part 1 did for the PlayStation 3. It was literally one of the last major exclusives on the PS3. It was that, and I think 6 months after the release of The Last of Us Part 1, we had the release of like Gran Turismo 6, which a lot of people didn't check that out. The Last of Us Part 1 was really that major game. However, in the case of The Last of Us Part 2, I don't think it's going to be the final major PlayStation 4 exclusive. I think that is going to be reserved to Ghost of Tsushima, but at this point, I could very well see Ghost of Tsushima ending up being a cross-gen title with the PlayStation 5 release as well, and most likely The Last of Us Part 2 is going to have a PS5 release at some point as well, but that is just speculation. Wanted to give you guys the heads up on all of that information. Alright, moving on from that, a lot of you guys, myself included, are very excited for Monster Hunter World's first expansion in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. A beta has been running for it, and it's been looking rather good. However, you might be wondering, is Iceborne going to be the first of a series of expansions for Monster Hunter World? And it looks like that's not going to be the case. Rather, Capcom is looking to close out the MH World experience with Monster Hunter World Iceborne. In a recent interview with Monster Hunter World producer Ryozo Sugimoto, he spoke with Game Informer and stated, quote, Iceborne basically completes Monster Hunter World, so it will be the last expansion. Now, they say it's the last expansion. However, Capcom has been very good in keeping the game updated with free updates and just making the game better. I'm sure that'll persist after the release of Iceborne, especially directly after the release of Iceborne. I'm sure they're going to continue rolling out updates and making the game better and better, especially because so many people are going to revisit the game with Iceborne. Many people are going to be checking it out for the first time with that complete edition being released. It's a good time for Capcom to continue putting their best foot forward and continuing to update the game. But in terms of major expansions, it looks like Monster Hunter World Iceborne will be the only one. And then, hey, moving on to the PlayStation 5, it's time for another Monster Hunter game. We now have the fundamental base of the fact that a lot of people are invested into Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is no longer that niche franchise that was relegated to Nintendo platforms and portable platforms. It is now a mainstream franchise that so many gamers know about. And moving on to a big budget release on the PlayStation 5 and next Xbox, you know that's going to do very well as well. Whether that be Monster Hunter World 2, whether they name it something completely different, that would be a major game release. But in terms of the content for MH World, it looks like it is being rounded out with the release of Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Alright, moving on from that, another game that I am highly anticipated coming up in the fall, and this one's going a little bit under the radar, is AI the Somnium Files. It's a brand new game coming from the guys over at Spike Chunsoft. And it looks to be a great story-driven adventure, and we got a brand new character trailer. It has you meet a lot of the different characters, including the main character in Date, Aiba, Boss, Iris, Mizuki, Ota, and Pewter. This is, of course, going to be a very story-driven game and a character-driven game, so if you're excited for it, maybe check out the trailer. It gives you a decent idea of what to expect. It is a Japanese trailer, so that should be noted. But nonetheless, the game is shaping up very nicely, and visually, it looks rather good. I mean, I don't expect anything blow-away out of a Spike Chunsoft release. Generally speaking, they keep their games a little bit lower budget from a technical side of things, but this one is pretty visually pleasing, and I expect something pretty good on that end as well. In terms of when you're going to get your hands on it, the game will actually be out on the PlayStation 4 come September 17th, and we're getting it ahead of the Japan release. The Japan release will be coming September 19th, September 20th in Europe, so you could be looking forward to that. If you're into story-driven games like Danganronpa, like Zero Escape, this is going to be right up your alley, and it's going to be another great game to check out. Alright, and finally, another game that's being prepped up for a fall release that's going a little under the radar is The Surge 2. We got a brand new developer gameplay walkthrough for that, showcasing 9 minutes of brand new gameplay. And this is one, as I mentioned, it's going a little bit under the radar. I really enjoyed The Surge. I thought it was a bit underrated of a game. I know that it's going to have its direct comparisons with the Souls games, and is it at that level? Not necessarily, but it is a good game in its own right. And here's an overview of the gameplay demo directly from publisher Focus Home Interactive. Before you return to the sci-fi post-apocalypse with axe in hand, let developers Deck 13 talk you through the world dangers and changes coming to The Surge 2. The dev gameplay walkthrough is narrated by Adam Hitene, head of game design at Deck 13 Interactive. See the massive new levels, the return of uncompromising and brutal combat now as intense as ever, as well as brand new features like asynchronous multiplayer and drones. Also showing off are improved bosses of The Surge 2 inside new environments with stunning variety between the high walls of Jericho City and its various parks and suburbs. The new and enriched move sets combined with directional blocking alongside character customization, more weapons, more implants, and more armor sets mean your character is truly your own in The Surge 2. Check out the gameplay for yourself. If you played the first Surge and you enjoyed that game, The Surge 2 is looking to directly build upon that, and it's adding a lot of new elements, so I think this is going to be up your alley. If you never played The Surge, which I imagine a lot of you guys did miss out on, check out the gameplay for yourself. I think a lot of you guys will be surprised with what this game is offering if you just view it as just another lazy Souls clone. It really isn't that, and it offers a lot of unique elements as well, so I wanted to give a shout out to that as well as we get closer and closer to The Surge 2's release come September 24th. And that's going to conclude this video. Again, it looks like The Last of Us Part 2 will be dropping in February 2020 with 4 different editions, so that's pretty exciting. Iceborne will be the only expansion for Monster Hunter World, at least up until this point. That is what the producer of the game is suggesting. AI the Somnium Files has gotten a brand new character trailer, so give that a look. The Surge 2 is a game that I know a lot of you guys don't have a lot of inherent excitement for, especially as we head into this fall season with so many big game releases. You know, you've got Borderlands 3 to be looking forward to, you got games like Death Stranding coming out, the next Call of Duty, whatever the case may be, there are a lot of major titles coming out, and The Surge 2 is falling well below the anticipation levels of those titles. However, I think it could turn out to be a pretty surprising game in its own right. Check out the developer gameplay walkthrough. We'll leave a link in the description box below. That's gonna conclude this video. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.